Okay, I think we're recording.
It shows it.
Yep.
Okay, excellent. All right, dream team. Who would like to start and describe their scenario?
I can go first. Okay, I'll make this brief. It's kind of like it happened over a time period, but I'll make it brief. The current job I have now, when I started, I worked third shift. I do sleep studies. So they had paired me with someone that is a veteran with sleep studies, had been doing it for so long. So got paired with her, and every night in the beginning, she would have a bad attitude. And I'm thinking, well, what is going on? And I didn't say anything. I'm just still trying to absorb everything. And it's hard to understand something and learn something when there is a block, and her attitude was just so bad. So I said, okay, I'm just going to continue to learn what I can learn. So one night I was coming out of patient room, and I overheard her say, well, I don't want to train it. I don't see why they keep hiring people. It was all negative. So then I understood what her attitude is. So I went to management on first shift and said, hey, can y'all just switch me with somebody, or can we do something differently? So what they did was move me to first shift for a little bit and then move me back to third. But we had to have a meeting about that. It was just more than what it should have been. And it was just all negative towards me. And it was very difficult. I had to just sit out in my car before work and pray, like, okay, we're going to have a good day. Everything is going to go smooth. But it's very difficult to work with somebody that don't have a good attitude. And we work 12-hour shifts. So to be around somebody with 12 hours, oh my God, it was just so long and drawn out. But I don't know how I got through it. In the end, it turned out good because she wrote me a little apology letter, and her attitude was just bad. What it was, she applied for a job. She didn't get it, so she took it out on everybody. She was just mad at the world. So in the end, she did apologize, which I was grateful for that. And we have like the best relationship now. So it's very challenging when you're starting a new job and it's already negativity. So that was my dilemma.
How long did it take for you to realize that something was going on, and you obviously felt comfortable saying something?
Actually, it was in the first week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was in the first week, which I was surprised things were happening so fast, but she was mad and bitter with the world. So it reflected on me, and then it reflected on the patients as well, because patients had started complaining. So when patients complain, then you have a way bigger issue, because that's the foundation. That's what's important to patients. So
I can't imagine trying to have to learn a new position and having to deal with that at the same time, just like feeling unwanted, and just like, not only is that hard, this is new, but now you have to deal with like something you had you weren't expecting that.
Right. Exactly.
You think you're new to a job, people are going to be friendly and want to help you out and support you from the beginning, not treat you
right.
Right. Yeah, that's hard, but it was difficult, but I've learned a lot. I think situations like that just makes you a stronger person. So
it's good that you stuck with it too.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Because I thought about like, okay, well, let me just see if my last job is still available. So I'm stuck with it. I'm here 6 years later. So
that's good. So the book, I guess, to bring it back to like the textbook and theories in there. So on page 164, it talks a lot about interpersonal dynamics. So I didn't know if we wanted to try to kind of apply and relate that to your situation.
Yeah, that's probably a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
I tried to pull out a few things for each that I thought might be kind of helpful to talk about. And that just seemed fitting for all of them, actually, because I think most of it's going to boil down to interpersonal dynamics. But I'm open to whatever you guys want to talk about, too.
So it sounds like the other person didn't have any motives behind, other than she was just upset. And it almost sounded like she needed to tell someone how upset she was, and she just didn't get that avenue to tell someone.
Yeah. And found it easier to take it out on like a new person than someone else that's there.
Yeah.
Well, and I look at that that Lencioni article that was when you look at the 5 dysfunctions of a team, like the one that is the common is trust. And if you don't have trust, then that's the foundation. And it sounds like you go in and when you're new, at least for me, I just I'm very trusting if I go into a new job, new situation, and it seems like you did that and then like bam.
Right. And honestly, I didn't even want to apply for the job because I've heard so many things about it. I told my professor at the time, I had graduated, but we still kept in contact a lot. And he was like, "Well, Sharita, just apply for the job." I'm like, "Well, I really don't want to, but I trust you." Okay. And Lord and behold, I ended up getting the job, but it was very challenging. But I think it was a very good learning experience. So I've learned a lot from it. But like you said, trust is so big, and if that's violated, oh man, it damages your relationship. So like I said, I'm just glad it's better now, much better.
Sure, that makes you become a better leader too, because you've experienced this, so you know what not to do when you get an employee.
Exactly.
And it sounds like you were able to communicate with her. You guys had like an open discussion about it.
Yes. Yeah. She was so sweet after then. She just felt so bad that she was just taking out her anger out on me, but it happens.
Mm-hmm. So I look at like how you handled it, by going to your management. So how do you feel like your management handled it?
I was the first one that they had to pull off third shift to first shift to finish training. So it was a transition for everybody. So now actually they train from first shift and then go to third just because of what happened to me. So I think they were caught off guard, but they understood because sometimes she can have a bitter attitude, and even if something personal is not going right in her life, you can tell. We're like, uh-oh, what happened? So that's a bad part, but now we get it.
Well, it sounds like they learned too, like how to invest in employees by like maybe learning how different shifts work better for training as well. Like maybe you didn't want to have to come to like the day shift for it, but maybe they find that it's just easier, and that can help them in the long run too, of like where to put new people so that everyone's comfortable.
True. That's true. I agree.
Do you think management could have handled it better? Like, because you said it was a little bit hard when you were like, "Can I be moved to first from third?" They were just like, "Wait, what?"
Right. Yeah. I don't know if y'all ever went from different shifts, but just going from third shift to first shift, when your body's so used to one shift, is difficult.
Right.
And I have all my stuff set up like doctor's appointments and stuff when my day's off because I work third. So it was just a totally inconvenience. But I adjusted. Sometimes you just got to suck it up and do what you got to do.
Well, and I think probably the hard part, I wonder, looking at your management, did they address the issue with the other lady? What are we calling her?
That is a good question.
You can do Jane. That's what we all do.
We all do Jane, yeah. We can get mine right
now. No, actually. And I think it's because sometimes you just know a personality, and it was her personality to be like that. Although it was wrong, but I think it's her personality. And working with her now, she's gotten much better, but I think management probably should have handled it a little bit differently. And I think that's where I should have had more trust in my management to go further with it. But I guess they were so focused on just trying to get me trained and get me comfortable back on third. So.
And that's hard. I know from a management perspective, you have to choose your battles, but if you're trying to develop your team, I would think that would have been a really good learning opportunity for Jane.
Right.
That going back to the interpersonal dynamics, that we all have bad days and things that go on, but we also have a job to do.
Right. It's just like that little saying, you can have a lot of stuff to go on outside of work, but once you hit the doors, that's supposed to stay outside the doors and, come in with a fresh attitude. So, and that doesn't always happen, but I truly believe in that philosophy.
All right. Well, is there anything else about Sharita's case, or are we ready to move on?
I think we covered it pretty well.
All righty.
Who wants to go next?
I will.
No, I can go.
Oh.
Are you going, Melody?
No, you go ahead, Dana.
It doesn't matter. I was just...
I'll go next.
I'm going to pull mine up just to touch on all the key points while I'm talking to you guys. So mine was about a new supervisor in my department that I work in. So I work in radiology administration. And this new supervisor currently oversees about 20 different schedulers for radiology, and they work across the medical center. She's basically been with the department for about 7 years, and she's really well liked, highly regarded by upper level management. She's definitely worked to be where she's at right now, but she's having a lot of problems with the peer to leader dilemma currently, which is a big phrase we use at UNC, and probably a lot of places use it. But she's friends with a lot of the employees because she used to work with them back in the day before she's moved up to being a supervisor. So that department has a lot of turnover. So immediately when she began the job, she had to start interviewing for a lot of open positions. Most of them are for an administrative associate, which is a lower level position. And then recently there was an admin specialist job that was open. And naturally, everyone in the department wanted the job. It got competitive, and she was in charge of recruiting for it and kind of wasn't sure how she wanted to do it. So she asked HR for a mix of internal and external candidates just to kind of make sure things were fair. And because we have the option to keep it just internal if we want to, but she wanted to make sure because she knew a lot of drama about her department. But she knows from the candidate pool that she got, she knows a lot of them, they just don't have a good work ethic. They call out, they like to stir up trouble. It's just kind of known that this is kind of how this goes down there. So I actually sat on the interview panel for these because I don't work directly with that portion of our office, and I was kind of an unbiased opinion. But when we finished the interview, we decided that we wanted to hire the external candidate. Not just because we knew that they were kind of removed from everything else going on in the department, but they truly had a different skill set, and they had an advanced degree that we thought would be beneficial. So overall, it was just a better fit for the department. But then after several weeks had passed, I think I named the girl Jane in my vignette. She kind of has started acting out and causing even more trouble in the department. And she submitted a glad you asked, which is kind of our anonymous complaint thing through the whole hospital that we were not practicing fair hiring policies, and that, she was turned down because Jane knew her too well and didn't want her for the position. So after that, the complaint went to upper management about their hiring process, and they've had to have a conversation about this to kind of address it and calm her down and try to pacify her a little bit. So I kind of left my vignette open because I don't know how this turned out yet. So my question, I guess, in the thing was, how should this conversation be handled, and what can she say to her to keep her as an employee and maybe help make her more engaged?
I think she needs to openly communicate with her, since it's common knowledge who did the anonymous complaint. And maybe just do it a one-on-one, or have someone else in the room just for your HR perspective and document it, because that was what I was given, because it kind of sounds a little bit similar to mine.
Yeah, it did. When I read yours, I think they were the most similar.
Yeah, and so that's what I was told to do, have someone in the room and document it, and not necessarily to go in her HR file a bad documentation, but hey, I see you have some issues. Let's talk about it. Like,
Right.
where's this stemming from? And
oh, go ahead.
do you know Jane?
I do know Jane, yes.
Okay, so maybe like an HR person in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone who isn't so tight-knit.
Right, someone that's not a part of it. Someone kind of removed, I think, from that conversation. I think that's because the whole dilemma kind of stems from that peer to leader. And once you know someone and you're trying to hire them, it's like a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, it gets personal.
But I liked in the one article, the trouble with teamwork.
Uh-huh.
I like the vulnerability-based trust that it talked about a little bit. I thought that was kind of interesting to maybe bring up with that because they kind of need that. Like, I think it's an honesty thing that Jane could have with Erin and be more truthful with her, and that might help their team dynamic of just being honest and more open with her.
No,
That was kind of.
I had a similar situation, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago where I had an open position. It was, again, a higher level position. I had someone in my department who applied. Another person from a different department applied. And then I looked at a couple of external. So it's very, very similar. And the person in my department, I think when she came into the interview, she thought, oh, well, I've got this. I'm the only one in this department who's applied. Like, she was dressed to a T. She'd like, but she comes in and she sits her coffee mug down and like slouches in my office. And I'm just like, to me, that you're like, oh, okay. It was very casual.
So many of our internal interviews are, they think they just, because they work there already, that they just have it, and they come in and they might look nice, but then their attitude just
I got this.
And so needless, I ended up hiring the person, an internal candidate, but from another department. And I tried to use that as a coaching opportunity. And when before it was announced who accepted the position, I talked with, Jane.
She's just a problem, this Jane.
Jane is a huge problem. And told her the decision that I had made. And, we actually talked for a long time about what could be done differently, or, if she wants to move up in the organization, these are the things that I was looking for, or someone else was looking for. And that was not an easy conversation to have.
Yeah.
But
she probably learned a lot from the conversation you all have.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hope so. We're friendly now, but we're still in the same department,
Oh, okay.
I'm sure that was helpful for her. I remember when I was an undergrad that we had these mock interviews. Mm-hmm. And, of course we got the whole spiel, like you should dress nice, like how to act and stuff. But it's, when you get in there with a professional, you're just like, oh, goodness, this is real. But they gave you feedback on how you interviewed, and that was probably really helpful for her for, the future. If she wants a higher level position, she now has the background and the knowledge to, maybe I shouldn't just take this like as it's nothing, because this is actually serious.
Yeah. So I say all of that, Dana, to go back to, maybe the hiring manager, how did they handle, even the notification. So I know that's not going to pacify, Jane now, but, as an opportunity for the hiring manager. I don't know.
Right.
I think too, when we look at the art, and I cannot remember which article it was from, since I've just reread them all again today. But focusing on the positives with, maybe with Jane, reframing some of the negatives to concentrate on what was positive and what she could do and what she could do in the future.
Like, we like these things about you, but, maybe, in the future, I think, and that's what they've been doing. I don't know this particular outcome or circumstance other than the part where I sat in on the interview and heard all about it. But I know a lot of the times, like, my director now will sit down with people interviewing for different positions. And if they don't get it, he'll kind of go through like a why, and then he'll offer to help with their resume and, offer like, these are classes you could take at work that might help you improve your chances next time around. So I think, granted, this girl had a lot of bad behavior as well, but maybe like on top of that, like, get that together and then maybe do these things, and the next time this comes around, we'll see that you took initiative to not only become like better with your attendance and your attitude, but you're also like taking a leadership course or just something little.
I think we have another Jane here that she always talks about, okay, the negative stuff that we've done or that we could do or whatever, but it's nothing positive. You get what I'm saying? Like, okay, you're doing well in this area, but these are the negative things. And she focuses all the time on the negative, like, okay, well, are we doing anything good? Everything is negative. So I think it's important as a supervisor to not only point out the negative things, but the positive things too. Mm-hmm. So I think that's, I guess, an encouraging factor.
Yeah, like building on strengths. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
And that, I think, as a manager, that is so hard. I think, to for that balance, mm-hmm. Because you want to be positive, you want to be encouraging to your team, but for me, anyways, it's easier to like sometimes ignore the behavior, and you don't want to deal with, the attendance problem or the negative attitude, but it's all a balancing act.
Exactly. I agree.
During our mock joint commission survey, that was one of the things they mentioned. Like, when you have something negative, bring up 5 positive things.
Yeah.
That way there's a happy feeling, not like, golly day, what am I doing right?
Happy feeling.
What is that sandwich technique? Positive, negative, positive.
Exactly.
Well, is there any, Dana, did we answer?
I guess I kind of gave that solution, but I think it's kind of just reiterating the importance of everything we kind of touched on. I think that's really truly how that needs to be handled anyway.
All right.
Well,
no, never mind. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dana.
I was just going to touch on like the boundaries portion too of like the peer to leader. If anyone had anything to say about that for her.
I think Jane should have, is Aaron is the...
Aaron's the problem.
Aaron's a problem.
I named 2 vague names in my story.
Aaron should have went to Jane before she posted a complaint.
That's a good point. And maybe even before she applied for the job.
Yeah, definitely.
But maybe like, hey, I'm going to be applying for this job.
Yeah, she should have used her powers for good. Like, what would you recommend it? Or like, what are you looking for when you're hiring?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know, in my small organization, if you move up, you are, going from a peer to a leader, and that's just inevitable. And we talk about this problem a lot at supervisor meetings, getting, and for me, and other supervisors in my organization handle this differently. Trying to break, kind of some sort of define that line. You don't want as much of a gray line, because we have folks that I work with who, they've been peers, they hang out after work a lot, they, this and that. So we've had a lot of issues with, people pointing out favoritism because, well, your supervisor, I kind of drew a hard line. And that transition was really hard. And so I think you have to find your own balance, because we don't have like policies or anything about that. But, I have like friends or coworkers or my teammates that see, it's Monday, I can't think either. Like trying to friend me on Facebook, and I'm like, no, that's kind of a line. I don't do that for any direct reports. And
yeah, I kind of definitely draw that line there. And I keep work very professional, and then outside of work, I don't know. And it's a good thing that I'm like that. I don't like to intertwine the two. So, I don't know. I work with you. Let's be friends. Let's go hang out. I'm like, let's just keep it as work.
I don't run into that as often. One, I'm I was a department of one. Apparently now I have more people.
Going into your vignette, because I know that you talked about that in it.
Yeah, let's go to your vignette.
Okay, so
I remember you mentioned that.
Back in December, this woman was part of, I can't remember her exact position, but she was a director. And she gave, I think, 2 months notice. And when she gave her 2 months notice, the CEO approached me and asked me if I wanted to learn grant writing. I said, yes, I think that's a great idea. That's only going to help me in the future. And like, that's a really valuable skill. Well, grant writing turned into owning all the grants. And then the director of that department coming to me and was like, I'm leaving December 5th and it's like December 1st. So here's a crash course on what to do with all these grants. And I wasn't really told I had employees. Like I knew there were employees of the grants, but I didn't really realize they were my responsibility. I mean, I did their like I put in their time every week, but I didn't pay them. I don't know how much they get paid. I make sure they're on budget, but they're pretty self-sufficient. Well, they are my employees, and I found that out like in January. And there was one of the grant outreach people came to me, and he brought up that Jane wasn't going to come to an operational training retreat that she had already RSVP'd to. She said she made this commitment. Her hotel was paid for, her food was paid for, her travel, all that stuff. And then the week before she's supposed to go, Jane tells the outreach coordinator that she can't, that she's going on vacation Saturday, and going to Raleigh for Thursday and Friday was too much for her to leave for Florida on Saturday. So he brings this up to me, and to me that doesn't sound like a good reason why I can't go somewhere. If you made this commitment early December or January, late December, said you were going to go, said you were interested, saw the itinerary, did all this, and then the week before, I can't go, I'm going on vacation. Obviously, you had plans for this Florida vacation probably way in advance before this training retreat. So, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, as an adult, that just doesn't seem like something someone would think was okay. But, he kept saying, well, she's not turning in her hours every day. She waits till the end of the week to give me like what she worked, which I think is also an issue. I'm a salaried employee, but I couldn't tell you what my hours were from last week. And I don't think many people would. I mean, you go to work 5 days a week, then things change. So, I was like, oh, that's a problem too. And then I get to looking at these timesheets or itineraries that her coordinator is sending me. And there's notes on the bottom of all of them that I had no idea about. And they all state like she's so many health assessments behind. She keeps forgetting to do her time daily. She sometimes misses turning in her timesheets on Thursday. So all these things are coming up. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to Joe. And Joe was the woman who had this positions before senior leader. So I go to Joe, say, hey, I'm having problems with Jane. His first words were, fire her. I'm like, what? You don't even know the problem. Like, you can't just fire someone. She has kids. And he goes, you can't, as a leader, you can't be soft because then they're going to take advantage of you. That's true. But I just don't feel like this is grounds for firing. This is like her first offense. First I'm hearing about it. And he goes, no, Jane is a problem. Those are his exact words. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna go now and talk to my senior leader because she's apparently over these people as well. And she had no idea. So I go to my senior leader and I explain what's happening. And she goes, well, you need to go to HR because I've never dealt with this. You need to get her folder. You need to see if she's had any other documented cases. You need to develop a file on her from yourself, from all this stuff, write it down, have a meeting with you, her, and HR. Don't be alone, and document it all. So that's what I did. I collected all those timesheets with everything on it, all the notes. I highlighted the negative things that, were going on consistently week after week after week. I pulled her old documentation from an issue before where she just didn't show up for work. She didn't answer phone calls. No one knew where she was. Honestly, I think she probably should have got fired then. No call, no show for no reason. Doesn't, multiple days in a row. I don't think you should keep the employee, but they did. So obviously there was something else behind that I didn't know. So in the vignette, I hadn't had the meeting with them yet, but I was dreading it because the last thing I wanted to do was fire someone because first I'm younger than her, like probably by 10 or 15 years. And I know I have to get over that in this position, but it was just like all this stuff was getting piled on me at once and I didn't have a chance to even make that decision on my own. It was just like, fire her. So the big scary gray cloud. But she came in for a meeting with HR and she explained she had no idea about the OPR was so important that her manager kind of told her about it. And I guess he thought she was getting all these emails from the organization that was providing all this, and she wasn't. She said she never got the itinerary. Her manager, we'll call him John. John never told Jane again after he mentioned it in January. He asked her if she wanted to go. Jane said yes. John made all the arrangements, and that was kind of the end of it. So Jane never got any information after that. And then she wasn't aware of any of these issues that John was having with her and that all of this was being brought up for the first time in front of me and our HR guy. And so what it ended up being a huge communication issue between John and Jane. So, which made me feel better that it wasn't as bad. She wasn't just being an irresponsible employee. She really had no idea. She never got the itinerary. She didn't know she had signed up. She said it was a good idea, but that's kind of where she wanted to go, but that was the end of it. So then she went on vacation this week. So next week, me, John, and Jane are going to have a sit-down meeting and talk about this communication problem and maybe ways to fix it. Like her time. I showed her, what was it? Almost like a Google Doc where she could put in her time that she shared with me and John. That way we could both see it every day. So now I know from her that she's doing it and from his side that this is getting done. And for the OPR, I'm going to tell John, hey, did you make sure she was getting these emails? Because to me, it sounds like you did all this, but from her, she's saying she didn't get any of it. So I need to sit down with both of them to see like what's really going on, because John wasn't able to go to the meeting that Jane was in. And then the meeting I had with John, Jane wasn't there. So now we need to come together. I don't know what else to do about it, really. I mean,
That's so funny. I kind of had the same situation happen not long ago. And long story short, I was sick about 3 weeks ago. About 3 weeks ago, I had the flu. Soon as I got over the flu, I got food poisoning, and oh my God, I think I'd rather have the flu than food poisoning. That was just terrible. But anyway, I have a PRN job, and I'd work there probably every other month, not often at all, but they had me on the schedule, had no clue, and no one told me about it. So I get this message, you're supposed to be here, and da-da-da. I'm like, what? I didn't win. So it was totally a communication breakdown. And I called this morning, actually, and she was like, well, I'm sorry. I should have sent you an email. I'm like, yeah, email, I would have known exactly, what was going on, but it made me look like I'm the no call, no show person.
Right.
And that's not a good feeling. So
that's how.
Yeah. And by her not getting the emails, like, she was just probably blind to the whole thing.
And that's what it sounded like when she was talking to. She's like, I had no idea that he booked the room for us, or booked a room for me and booked a room for himself.
Right.
She goes, but what he did say, and she did agree to this, was she told him the week before, and he told her to contact Zoe at this organization to let her know she wasn't going, and she didn't do that.
Oh, yeah.
And so I mentioned that to her, and she goes, yeah, I didn't realize the situation. I'm like, maybe, when John told you to do that.
Right.
I don't think she realized how important or how important this really was, that to her, this was just something they talked about once, and now she was signed up for it and didn't really have any idea.
Well, honestly, Melody, when I read your vignette, the first thing that came to my mind is that your organization needs to provide you with more tools,
right?
And more training. Like, to me, that's the crux of the entire. Like, it seems like you were thrown into a situation, and you've handled it very well, but your organization just. I felt like kind of abandoned you when I'm reading your
Yeah. I mean, that's actually really common. When I got my job, it was kind of the same situation. Like, I'm the director of medical staff services. When I started, I could not tell you like from what X from Z was. It was just, I didn't have any idea what credentialing was. I mean, I had some idea. Of course, you learn about it, but I didn't know all the ins and outs that I do now. I had no training in it. It was just kind of like, oh, you did a good job at this spreadsheet. Here's a job. I'm like, okay, I'm just out of college. My only job I can compare this to was cashiering at a grocery store. So yeah, I'm going to jump at this opportunity. But
yeah,
and it's not just me, it's everyone in the organization. They instead of hiring for someone when they knew that Sally was leaving, they throw it upon someone else, but that's not common either. Our anesthesiologist retired last October. It was known all of 2016 that he was retiring. We finally got a permanent position this February. They didn't start looking until after this physician left. This is common. It's about to happen again with our oncologist. He's retiring in June. He is leaving in June. And it's quiet, silence. Like, I'm not getting anything on my desk. But you better believe when they find someone, it's going to be like, is he credentialed yet? Is he done? It's like, I gotta keep myself, like, stop.
Probably, and probably the biggest piece of advice I could offer you, Melody, is to try to foster that team spirit with these two. Mm-hmm. What are we calling them? Jane and
John.
It's especially if you don't work directly with them, that's harder. Mm-hmm. But you're their supervisor. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have to make the effort to touch base and to reach out. That's what. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I should say that's one of the things that we do a supervisor survey every year, and I got dinged 2 or 3 years ago, which I was really upset because, I'm an awesome supervisor. I mean, come on. But I was traveling a lot and for work. And I literally had 3 back-to-back trips where I was gone an entire month without seeing my team. And as soon as we get back, that's when the supervisor survey was sent out.
Oh, no.
So I got dinged for not being around.
Right.
And not being present. And so I'm just like, how dare you? Don't you understand my schedule and my responsibilities? But, my supervisor, she's like, Christy, we know, but you need to make an effort to be present.
Mm-hmm.
So we start off, every day that we're all in the office at like 9:30, 10 or 15 minutes, we just do a huddle and say, this is what's going on. This is what I need help with. This is, but that's made a world of difference. And it doesn't take a lot of time.
Right. So that was kind of my plan. They work in another county over. They don't even work in the same county as me. But we do this thing every month called Coffee with the CEO. And she basically gives us the board report for the financials and all of that. And they're usually both at those. So I made a point after the meeting with Jane, to put that on both of their calendars, because ideally they should both be at Coffee with the CEO. John is usually always at them, and Jane comes sometimes. But I asked her, I said, obviously I see you are having a communication issue, and so is John. And she totally agreed with me on that. And so I was like, either before or after with Coffee with the CEO, we need to meet. We need to come together and figure out what works best for us, because they don't see each other that much either. They may go a week without seeing each other because they kind of work in the field. They're the farm worker health grant, so they go out to all these different farms and take the farm workers and get them not necessarily health insurance, but the grant helps pay for their medical costs. So they may only pay the copay, and then the grant has a contract with the organization, and we cover the rest. So it's like primary care, specialty care, vision, anything they may need that they may not get because they haven't developed, a home here yet. So it's a great program, and they're both very great for the job. I mean, they've developed a relationship with these workers that come year after year, and the workers help bring in more people because, they're working, and then new people come, and then, here, go this avenue, So it's a great program. It just, I don't want to fail them. I want them to be successful in their jobs, and I want them to feel comfortable and not like I'm on a witch hunt trying to fire them for a reason that I was given that wasn't the case at all.
I think the book has a few good points. It talks about Model I on the interpersonal conflicts in groups. Not that you're having like an interpersonal, but maybe because you're just getting to know them. It has a few like good things, like agreeing on the basics, so maybe like setting an expectation that with the time and attendance for them. And then I really like this like thing it suggests about experimenting. Especially because they're new to you. Like maybe you can try some different things with them.
Yeah, that was my goal. That's why I brought like Google Docs into it.
Yeah, I remember you mentioned that. Like I think that's a good thing that you're doing to like experiment with something not maybe typical. But
well, John's the one who brought it up to me initially. And see, our organization won't let our work emails use Google Docs.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, maybe we can just develop like an outside email that we only use for this. That's through Gmail. And Jane already had one. And John was like, well, I don't want to use my personal email. And I'm like, well, don't use your personal email. We'll develop a new one just for this. And we can, give it to the organization so they don't think anything's fishy going on. But, I discussed that with the HR guy, and he thought that was a great idea. As long as it's open, we all know about it, and it's working. So.
I think
If it
a lot of
will work.
appropriate actions to try to make things better with them.
Yeah. It's just, I think they've had problems in the past together. It kind of seems like Jane kind of, it's not that she's not doing her job. She does it. She just doesn't check in with John. I think John just feels like because of that, she isn't working. But he says she's really goal motivated. So when he sent me all those time itineraries with all those notes that sounded really negative, when I brought that up to him, he goes, no, those aren't negative. Those are goals for her. So like they have to do so many assessments a year. And so they developed a plan where they would do so many each month. And she's just behind for January and February. But that's common because farm workers don't start coming in until about August, July.
Yeah.
So but no one told me that. So it was like, if you were to read it, it all looks like negative, like didn't do this, didn't do that, still working on this. Like, I was like, oh gosh, maybe we can find out a way that it doesn't sound like she's not doing her job, that she is, but, or set it as goals instead of
notes on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
All right, am I up now? Oh, like I was trying to see what did I say? So mine is obviously my real life scenario that was really difficult during the time that I had one of my team members had been at the board longer than me. She started out as a temp, did a really great job, so was hired on permanently, had some issues like health-wise, had a pregnancy, really difficult pregnancy, had a horrible supervisor that, didn't help her out, let her know what her rights were. This was a long time ago. Jane, felt comfortable to go to senior management. Their supervisor retired, so, and then Jane ends up in my department, starts calling out all the time. And year after year, she had run out of vacation time, which we have, like altogether like 6 weeks of time, and she would run out of time. And no supervisor documented any of that. It was just known. So it wasn't like in a bad, review or counseled or performance plan or anything. And then eventually when she became under my direct report, she continued, to have these issues. And I, at first it was like, I don't know how to handle this. For 15 years, this person has been passed along to like multiple supervisors with nobody addressing it. But at that point, when Jane first started reporting to me, it was just the two of us. And so when she was out, I was doing all of her work. And then she started not following procedures, just not even letting us know, like, you're supposed to show up to work at 8 or 8:30, whatever, your agreed upon hour is. Maybe 10 o'clock she would call in. Or, there was one time where I had to ask our receptionist to go to her house because we hadn't heard from her, and she's a single mom. We were concerned. So like a lot of this stuff was happening, and I just didn't know how to handle it. And our HR department, I have to say, was very good, but it was document, and I had started documenting everything for like terminate, to counsel for termination. But it just in my, I guess I'm too nice of a supervisor, because I just couldn't do it, and looked for that more team approach and trying to find different things, because I have to say, when I knew she was having, and the only reason I knew she was having some chronic health issues is because we had been a peer. I don't even know if if her supervisors knew that she had chronic health conditions. And, our HR department was very much, well, let her know what her FMLA rights are so that, she's protected as well as we're protected. And I think that's something that I could use more training in on what the law defines as, if you're covered under, the Family Medical Leave Act, but you still have to follow what procedures are. So that was really hard to navigate for me for a while. But we've, through kind of trial and error, we figured out like what would work schedule wise, because when she was out, she got behind. And then by this, we started adding employees to my group. She would start snapping at other employees and, just, rude on the phone, in email, and then just face to face. And you're like, really? So I had to have some of those, professionalism, discussions. But giving her first like poor review because of some of the choices that she had made by like not calling, following procedures or being rude. And I think that actually was a learning opportunity for her. And we figured out like what would work schedule wise. And, I think it's probably been 2 years since we had, since these issues were addressed. She is absolutely the most productive employee on my team.
Wow, that's awesome.
My boss, it was funny, we had a retirement for a different lady in our department. And my boss was like, when I was looking for like nice things that people like email about this other person, she's like, I found all these emails where we were going back and forth about Jane, documenting her poor performance and some issues. And she was like, I can't believe where we are now and how awesome she is. And, it took some time and it took me a lot of grief, but I am so glad that it worked out the way that it did. But I feel like I kind of went through a convoluted way to get there.
At least you all didn't give up on her.
Yeah.
Because some managers will just throw in the towel. This is not necessary. So that's awesome. Y'all didn't give up on her.
Yeah. See, Christy, when I read your vignette, I understood like how you just didn't want to fire this person because, she seemed, before she seemed to work hard. She did great, and I mentioned it because I took notes on it. How in the book there's an area where they talk about, I think it's chapter 6. But when an employee isn't appreciated and kind of treated like they're dumbed down, they'll withdraw and through chronic absenteeism or simply by quitting. But it didn't seem like that was the case. Not the only thing that changed was her manager left, that's right. Her,
the one that she had talked to.
Yeah, and so it almost seemed like she just didn't know how to act almost after she left.
Yeah. Like I said, it just, I think she did have a chronic health condition that was identified. I think getting a diagnosis really helped her, but, from talking with other folks, it's like, we would have gotten rid of her a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And, I know that sometimes that it can be seen bad for business. When you're looking at a single mom with 2 kids.
That's exactly how Jane was in my story.
That's real. And this investment in her has paid off. We sent her to training. becoming the totally responsible person. That's like one of, I don't know if you guys have gone through that.
At UNC, we have a
Yeah.
class.
That for a couple of years, that has been, all the rage. The name is horrible.
It sounds bad. It's part of our leadership training, and I was like, am I in trouble? They're like, no.
I actually took that class because we were going to ask, my direct reports to take the class. And so if you ever have the opportunity, but like we did that and all of this, the coaching and
It's helping them learn, and that's, the book talks about like the basic human resource strategies and needs, and learning is a big component of that. So I guess maybe learn at that. How to be a totally responsible person.
Would you guys have done anything differently?
No. I don't want to say I'm not the person that would fire someone. I've never fired someone. And one of my senior leaders that was actually my preceptor as an internship, he's the one I went to after Joe was like, fire her, because I was like, oh gosh, you have no heart. I'm going somewhere else. So I went to James instead, and I sat down. I'm like, look, I don't know what to do here. And I knew he had to fire a provider probably about a year ago, and it was the first time he had ever fired someone. He's like, look, this is what Laura, the CEO, told me. He goes, it's not supposed to be easy, and if you have to do it, you have to do it. But once you do it, 9 times out of 10, the employee isn't going to be angry with you if you go about it the right way. You
Right.
Explain what they did, you show them the documentation, and most of the time, they understand, and you kind of move on. He goes, firing someone should never feel good. I'm like,
Right.
yeah, no, the thought makes me want to throw up. Forget about like actually doing it. So, but he was super helpful. He's not my senior leader. I kind of wish he was, because he's always there. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't have done anything different either. You fought for her, and she proved to,
Right.
she made you, this sounds horrible, the wording, but she made you look good because you fought for her, and now she's got that trust in you. Like, I'm gonna
And
give
she
her my
trusted
all.
her too. Right.
Yeah.
And she does. And I mean, it's, the credit belongs to her because, she had to make a change, and she did.
Herself around.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. Well,
Was that the first time you've ever run into like a situations like that?
that was the hardest one. I have I think my team, luckily, like I have one with some chronic absenteeism now, but there's like some whole other things going on. But I think her, Jane too, is, it's honestly, this is her first like real job out of college, and it's just maturity and learning, we're not entitled to everything, just because you want a standing desk and you want to work from home 3 or 4 times a week, or, you want to have coconut water in the kitchen versus a soda, or I'm making that up, that we're not entitled to those things.
Right.
So that's more of a coaching, and I think that has gone, very, very well. I think with her, from what I learned from the first Jane situation, is that we're able to, not get to the point of a bad review. We're able to address things as they're happening. And so that's what I've really tried to take from that, is that one of my direct reports should not come into a review. They should know what their review is when they come into it. we do 6 months, a touch base at 6 months that we just did, a couple weeks ago. And then we do it at the year point, which we'll do in August. And the one in August is what dictates our raises for the next year. So that's the important one. So if we, but even at the mid-year, my goal is, if there are issues, we've talked about it and we already have a plan to fix that. And to give them opportunity to correct anything before we get to August when it impacts, their salary.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I learned from the first situation. But I had never dealt with anything with FMLA and I've honestly, knock on wood, I've never had to fire anyone in a professional, atmosphere. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I find myself fortunate.
Yeah, I think as a leader, I definitely need to grow, because, I'll suffer through a bad meal at a restaurant instead of having like a conflict with the waitress, like, this tastes like crap. So I need to learn how to speak up and just be like, hey, we need to talk.
But honestly, that the whole like sandwich approach, or the positive, never leave on a negative note.
Right.
And it depends upon the employee's personality. But I've been through many of these conversations where, my team member is crying and you're like, oh, so please just, don't cry. I have to, but it's sort of and my team knows this. If you're willing to work with me, I'm willing to work with you.
Mm-hmm. That's what I told my Jane. I was like, you know what? I didn't know how to approach, and I was straight up honest with her. I'm like, I didn't know how to approach this. Like, I was told one thing and something else, and I didn't want to get you in the wrong mindset. Like, I didn't want her thinking she was coming in to get fired. Because that was not my plan at all. And so, and that's what I told her. I'm like, I didn't want to tell you were coming in because I didn't want you to think I was on a witch hunt. Honestly, I wanted to know what happened because I was told one thing, and obviously that's not what went down. And she was just happy that I was honest with her, like, at the end. Because I told her, I said, we need to just talk about a couple things. If you could come up to the hospital. I didn't tell her what they were, but what do you, in that situation, do you address it over the phone? Like, hey.
I think it's more professional, face to face.
Yes, and that was
to me.
That's how I felt too. That's why I was vague. But I feel like being vague, I told her I didn't want her to think I was not being honest. I just didn't want to scare her away.
And honestly, that is, it's kind of at your discretion. You don't want things to put them off too long.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's going to be a week before you can actually see her, then maybe you do have part of the conversation over the phone.
Yeah.
I think if the meeting can be soon, then definitely do it face to face.
Yeah, it was like 2 days within the time that everything came up, and then we sat down with HR. So reading these makes me feel better.
What, that we're all dysfunctional?
Yeah, because and I told someone at the hospital, I was like, if this was a case study, I could tell you all day what you needed to do, what needed to happen, and it would just be da 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 and done. I'm like, but these are real people. These aren't Jane and John from our books.
Yeah, exactly.
The people element make it hard.
Well, I am definitely, when we did the self-assessment, human resources was my highest score. All right, Melody.
Me too. Yeah, so I was like, I like the warm and fuzzies. I don't like the The alcohol burn, cleaning out wounds.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think we've covered everything. Does everybody feel good about?
Yeah.
Yes.
So project's due tomorrow. Project 2 is due tomorrow.
Yes.
Stop recording. Do we want to?
I'm going to stop recording.